How's it going, Twitch? My name is Skull, and on behalf of East Asia Soft, welcome to today's stream. Today is Sunday, which means that it's time for me to continue my playthrough of Venus Improbable Dream. We just started Chapter 2 last week, a beautiful ending to Chapter 1. And let me go ahead and pull up my cheat sheet to make sure we get the good ending, the best ending for this game. So, let's see, we went the true ending, there we go. And, yeah. We're good, we're set. Let's go, let's hop into it. Load up our save file. Practice had gone relatively smoothly, although we couldn't fit in as much as we usually do. The two of us are packing our things away and getting ready to leave, when to our collective dismay, an unexpected knock comes on the door. It swings open to reveal Kudo-sensei, who strides into the room somewhat apologetically. Sorry to disturb you two. I think I left some sheet music in here from earlier today. Having initially bristled in fear at Kudo-sensei's arrival, Haruka relaxes upon hearing his voice, going back to sorting out her bag. I'm going to turn the music down just a little. There we go. He crosses the room toward me, scanning the top of the piano, until he comes across a book sitting on the back of it. I had noticed it when I'd first sat down, but ignored it as it hadn't belonged to me or Haruka. Oh, there it is! As he leans across to grab the book, he turns to me, jerking his head towards Haruka with a questioning glance. He's evidently taking advantage of her lack of sight to visually ask me whether I'd been successful in persuading her to join the group or not. That's pretty sneaky of him. In fact, he's not usually forgetful enough to leave his things in here. Has he set this up on purpose? If so, he's more mischievous than I'd realized. Wanting to be honest, I shake my head, knowing that he'll be disappointed. As expected, his expression drops somewhat, and he nods back silently with a knowing smile, obviously having anticipated such an answer. However, he quickly fixes his usual cheery grin back onto his face. Thanks! As if nothing had happened, he marches out of the room in his regular peppy manner, leaving me feeling a little guilty and Haruka none the wiser. He scared me for a minute then. That's the second time he's burst in here today. I emit a vague laugh and the two of us finish getting ourselves ready and head out. Once we're out in the late afternoon glow, Haruka turns to me as usual, although there's something a little different about her demeanor. Kakeru, when you were talking about me playing in the group, did Kudo-sensei ask you to? Rumbled. It doesn't make me feel great to admit it. Yeah, sorry. He mentioned it to me just before I showed up. She nods, seeming as though she'd been suspecting it all along. It's okay, I had a feeling. I guess he thought he had a new way of trying to convince me. She smirks, so I relax a bit, knowing that she's not angry at me. I'm still going to try and perform, even if he doesn't like how I'm doing it. The statement is pretty bold for someone who's never actually managed to stay true to their word yet, but for some reason, the determination is somewhat typical of Haruka in a way I can't really put my finger on. Do you think you'll be ready to do it this year? She pauses, contemplating my question seriously, and though there's a hint of worry in her eyes, she nods as she speaks. I've always wanted to play for people ever since I started learning the flute. I know some people must think it sounds silly coming from me, but it's just been my goal for a long time. The dream she's been trying to follow. We've talked about it before, and I have no doubt that her wish to make it come true is just as strong now as it had been when she'd first felt it. It's just, listening to music really moves me. I'd love to be able to do that for others. So that's what she loves about it most. Making a connection with people through music and being able to speak to them without using words. That sounds just like Haruka, and to be honest, I feel a little inspired by her. I've never really taken much notice of the people around me, but there's something about Haruka that I admire when she talks about music like this. I'm sure you can do it. I tell her this because I feel relatively confident that it's true to some extent. She puts so much significance into performing that I'm sure anyone listening would enjoy it. It's just up to her nerves and whether she feels able to make that move. She blushes slightly, seeming bashful. I hope so. I'll cheer you on. She giggles softly. Thanks. We grow quiet for a moment and then she speaks up again. I'll be rooting for you too if you do decide to try it. I guess Kudo-sensei will probably be wanting an answer tomorrow. Yeah, you're right. I acknowledge the fact glumly, not enjoying the reminder. I'm going to have to riddle this out once and for all tonight. Whatever you decide, just make sure that you're happy with it. Yeah. Well, I'll see you tomorrow then. Pulling myself back out of my heavy thoughts, I focus on seeming normal. Yeah, see you at club. She nods with a smile, and we turn away, heading in opposite directions. I can't concentrate. I watch as my in-game character dies again thanks to my sloppy playing, and when the game over screen appears, I simply stare at it absent-mindedly, too distracted to start another round. I've been trying to get on with my homework and relax with some gaming, but I have way too much on my mind. The prospect of having to give Kudo-sensei an answer about the performance tomorrow is consuming me. When I got home, I hadn't told my parents about the festival. I figured it'd be too troublesome. If they got the idea in their heads that I might perform, they'd probably go crazy, pinning all of their hopes on it, and then be crushed with disappointment if I didn't go through with it. I don't need that kind of pressure and guilt. Realizing that I can't really focus on my game right now, I relent and contemplate the festival again. What would it really be like if I performed with the group? I guess that since Air on the G-string is one of my favorites, that gives me some optimism. However, though it pains me to acknowledge it, it's not really the difficulty of the piece that's my main concern. The thing I'm scared about, more than anything else, is my hemangioma. I'm just terrified to put myself on display like that and be noticed by hundreds of people, or however many the school's auditorium can fit. The idea is about as far out of my comfort zone as you can get. Despite this, my feeling isn't just a clear-cut absolute refusal. It might be my sense of obligation to the club and the fact that I don't want to be a disappointment to Kudo-sensei. But for some reason, I can't just write it off like that. Perhaps there's also a little speck of hope for myself hiding amongst everything too. There could be a part of me, however small, that wants to see if I could actually pull off something like this. I guess it's the same part of me that gets jealous when I see friends having fun together and talking with each other easily without a care in the world. The side that wants to stop being so stubborn and fearful and be more like them. In a way, it's nice if that part of me does exist, because it means that I'm not as hopeless as I always chalk myself up to be. Okay, that's just a typo. But whether I could follow its enthusiasm and do something I've never done before at such a big scale, I just can't say. Thumbing up my phone, I put it on silent, making sure my alarm is set. I'm going to bed slightly earlier than I usually would, but the flurry of concerns in my head is preventing me from getting much done anyway, so I figured I might as well attempt to get more rest. Laying down and flicking the light out, I sigh heavily and try to empty my mind. I'm jittering at the fact that the point at which I'll have to give Kudo-sensei my answer is getting ever closer, but I do my best to ignore it. For now, I'd better just sleep. What time is it now? 3 a.m. Not what I wanted to see. I haven't slept a wink yet, still agonizing over this festival, and the more I try to think about nothing, the more nervous I get. Huffing and accepting that I'm probably not going to fall asleep yet, I run things through my mind once more. What about the idea of that solo performance, as Haruka mentioned? I haven't really contemplated that yet. I guess if I messed up during the group performance, it'd probably be really obvious, and I might end up throwing everyone off, wrecking the whole thing. If I'm by myself, I can just smooth it over as best I can, without really obviously out of key in comparison to anyone else. I guess that's also a plus, but then everyone would be staring at me, and me alone, and that's definitely not a plus. Oh man, I don't want to be thinking about this anymore. I just want to sleep and be free of it for as long as I can. I silenced my phone's alarm, having already been awake. I've hardly slept at all. My mind just couldn't rest, given everything I'd had to think about. Dragging myself lethargically upright, I rub my eyes and wince at how exhausted I feel. This isn't going to do me any good in class, never mind in music club. At the thought of the club, my stomach clenches, and a shock of fear jolts through me. I still haven't settled on an answer yet. Getting to my feet unsteadily, I trudge over to my closet and start to rifle through its drawers for some clean underwear and socks. As I move on autopilot, a flicker of dark humor crosses my mind. If I have just stayed true to my antisocial ways and refused to join the club, I wouldn't be in this mess. The day has been odd, time seeming to both crawl at a snail's pace and zoom forward at random intervals. My head has been all over the place, and even now, halfway through the last class of the day, I'm still a mess. Matsumoto-sensei is lecturing us all on the subject of trigonometry, but I haven't been listening at all. Instead, I'm poring over a piece of scrap paper that I've secretly ripped out of the back of one of my workbooks. On the paper, I've written a list of all the pros and cons I can think of for both performing with the club group and going solo. It's helped a little, as every possible fear and comforting element alike is staring back at me objectively, so I can keep weighing things up without forgetting something or getting too stuck on one idea. However, I am still struggling to come up with a finite answer. Sighing under my breath, I look at it again. Group performance. Less attention on me. Piece is relatively easy. Any screw-ups will be more obvious. Solo performance. Can choose an even easier piece. Any screw-ups can be covered up without derailing other people. More attention on me. It just goes round in circles with no clear choice, and I'm leaving out the third option. Don't perform. Won't have to put myself on display. No pressure to play well. Will let everybody down. That's not a great alternative either. Glancing up at the clock, I notice that time's beginning to run out. Soon, I'll be walking through the door to the club room, and Kudo-sensei will be expecting to hear my decision. Do a duet with Haruka! Come on, do it! A wave of stress crashing over me, I sit back in my chair slightly and regard the paper. I'm probably analyzing everything too much. Maybe I should just go with my gut feeling and trust my instincts instead, as trying to go about this logically isn't really getting me anywhere. But what is my gut saying? Through my swirling emotions, a memory resurfaces. Haruka telling me why she wants to perform for others, making people experience something special, celebrating how great music makes her feel through performance. She has a dream, and no matter how often her struggles cause her to fail, she keeps trying to make it come true regardless, year after year. I can't deny that I really admire her for that. It seems wholly futile and yet touchingly courageous at the same time. I think that's one of the things I like about her and why I enjoy practicing with her. It's not just for fun or because it's expected of her. She plays because it's the most important thing in her life. I've only just realized it now, but that's what it is. I genuinely find that inspirational. She talks about performing on stage as if it'd be the most amazing thing in the world, and I think it would in a way. For as little as either of us have lived in our short, anxious lives so far, it'd be a crowning achievement. I can picture myself sitting in an audience, watching her as she plays for all to see and hear. It seems unlikely, but it's also something that I'd like to see become a reality too. That said, with the way her enthusiasm has begun to rub off on me, what about me? What does the picture of me playing on stage look like? Do I want that to happen as much as I want it to happen for Haruka? If I saw her do it, would I end up feeling jealous of her success and want it for myself too? I'm not sure, but now that I'm in this mindset, I note that it would be incredible for me to have done something like that too. If I put my hemangioma aside for a moment and just think about the rest of it, it becomes a somewhat appealing idea, as absolutely crazy as it sounds to me. My parents would probably never question my emotional stability again after seeing something like that. I'd undo a lot of worry on several people's behalves and prove to them and myself that I'm a capable person and not ruled by my insecurities. I can't say that I've ever harbored a dream like Haruka has, but the opportunity to work towards one is now laying at my feet, having been there for the last month, though I hadn't opened my eyes to it. My own dream. Is this it? Could I allow myself to have a goal after having thrown all of my aspirations and desires away all that time ago? The boy I used to be, will a small part of him come back if I ask it to? Or is this something beyond reach? Too far gone to bear the load of potential humiliation and failure? Alright, I think I finally know what I have to tell Kudo-sensei. This is going to be hard, but it has to be done. I shoot to my feet and bolt out of the classroom, heading down the corridor as fast as I can. I'd rather talk to Kudo-sensei as privately as possible, considering what I'm planning to say. As I head down to the bottom floor, my growing nerves begin to tangle in my chest, making me feel as though I'm being internally bound by brambles. Ignoring it as much as I possibly can, I march toward the clubroom door, taking a deep breath before entering. Okay, I'm the first student here. I know that others will start to arrive soon, but at least we can have this conversation alone. Casting around for him, I spot him putting his bag down onto his chair, having only just got here a few seconds before me. Ah, Akane, you're eager today. Something you wanted to talk about? He doesn't spell it out, but I can tell that he's anticipating my answer. I go over to him sheepishly, and though his demeanor is friendly as always, I can tell that he's expecting to be disappointed. About the festival. He faces me squarely, looking the most serious I've ever seen him. Yes? My nerves threaten to strangle me, but I bunch my fists inside my pockets, willing myself to continue and give him the answer that I feel is right for me in all of this. I don't know why entirely, but there's only one option in my mind now. Perhaps it relates to the fact that the group still intimidates me, but whatever the motivation is, it coaxes me to finish my sentence. I'd rather do a solo performance, if that's okay. I tremble with nerves, almost shocked at my own decision, and begin to dread Kudo-sensei's response. As I'd anticipated, he regards me with surprise, which quickly turns into slight disapproval. Well, I must say, I didn't expect you to say that, Akane. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm thrilled that you like to perform, but I'd really hoped for you to stick to the group. He isn't bitter or stern in his words, but seems to be reluctant to commit to putting on 3 separate performances, considering that Haruka is also aiming to do her own. I can understand why, but I just don't feel like the group environment is right for me. This is about your lack of experience. I've told you before, I've seen some promising improvement in you, you know. I don't think you're dragging the group down like you think you are. I'm sort of taken aback by his bluntness, though it is nice of him to encourage me like that. However, it still doesn't ease my mind any further. I feel like if I'm going to actually attempt this ridiculous idea, I'd be better off trying to do it my own way like Haruka does. That way, I can keep everything super easy and have less to worry about. On top of the obvious terrifying issue, of course. I haven't managed to say anything in response yet, but Kudo-sensei huffs, seeming to relent. Well, alright, Akane. I suppose I'll allow 2 solo performances. Fujiwara must have had more of an effect on you than I'd thought for. He mutters this with a slight smirk to show he's only joking, although I can sense he's not exactly happy about the situation. However, if this is going to be the case, then I'm expecting hard work from you, understand? I'm happy to accommodate your needs, but I'd like you to genuinely give this a proper go. He looks at me almost strictly, and I nod eagerly, wanting him to feel as though he can trust me to not mess around. I highly doubt that I'm actually going to make it to the stage, but he doesn't need to know that right now. He seems to accept my slightly flustered agreement, nodding after a moment. Alright, that's that then. There's no real point to you being in here considering you're no longer practicing in the group, so I suppose you can practice in the other room with Fujiwara from now on, as long as you both get on with your practice adequately. I'll pop in every now and then to check on your progress, and if you need any help, you know that I'm still here to answer any questions you may have. The words sound like a blessing to my ears, and I nod again, glad to have been set free from the group. I'm just not made for scenarios like that in the long run. The 2 of us become distracted from our conversation somewhat at the sound of the door bouncing back on its hinges from someone pulling it too vigorously, and looking up we realize that the room is almost full. I eye Kudo-sensei again, and he shifts his weight to the other foot, seeming a little disgruntled at my choice, but accepting it nonetheless. Go on then. I hope you choose a piece you'll feel positive about for the festival. Thanks. I stutter out the single word and spring into action, skittering across the room towards the corridor. Now that I've essentially been excused from all group work, I feel even more eager to get away from the noise and bustle of the room and enjoy the quietness of the other. Feeling strange to be doing this so early in the club session, but grateful for it at the same time, I knocked to announce my presence and entered a little practice room. When I turn back around from closing the door, I look up to see Haruka standing a little stiffly, looking towards me with a mixture of confusion and alarm on her face. She's paused in the middle of slotting the pieces of her flute together. Hey, it's me. She visibly relaxes when she recognizes my voice, but still seems surprised that I'm here, considering the fact that I don't usually show up until free practice begins. Oh, Kakeru. What are you doing here so early? I thought you were Kudo-sensei for a second. Wanting to share the news with her, but also feeling very strange about it, I answer hesitantly. I told him that I want to do a solo performance. The words feel uncomfortable when I say them out loud, and I start to grow worried about my choice. I may have managed to weasel my way out of group work, but I still have a potential performance to give in a month's time, and completely alone, too. I can't believe I even agreed to it, but for some reason, I just felt like I had to try. If I never put forward any more effort than I have been doing, then my life will never get better. I've done some decent things recently, yes, but something tells me that I shouldn't let it end there. Joining a club, gaining a friend, meeting new people, achieving something great is a positive next step. Despite my inner turmoil, Haruka seems pleased with my announcement, sporting a bright smile. Really? That's great, Kakaru. I think it's a good idea. You can do whatever you like that way. I much prefer it to trying to force myself to fit in with the group. Her words echo a large part of the thought process I'd had when deciding to go down the solo route in the first place. In a way, it's reassuring me a little that I might have picked the better option, though I'm still very unsettled about this whole thing. Well, I don't think Kudo-sensei was very happy about it. Recalling his reaction with dark amusement, I smirked to myself, and Haruka grows a little more serious, seeming to guess the gist of what he'd said before I even tell her. I can imagine. I don't think he really wanted to let me do everything by myself when I first joined the club years ago, but I guess he allowed it because he didn't want to force anything on me with, you know. Yeah. I'm certain that Kudo-sensei must have wanted to be sure that he didn't come across as intolerant to her disability and the issues that brings up for her, and it led to him letting her stay separate from the group. He probably didn't want to, ideally, but I can picture him agreeing to it if it would keep her in the club at all. I guess I've brought about a similar situation now, and I do feel a little bad for it. I guess he's gonna have to advertise 3 club performances now. That's not gonna be pretty if I end up dropping out. Yeah. She sounds somewhat vague as she replies, so I look questioningly at her. Her gaze has drifted off to the side, and she seems to be contemplating something seriously. What? She comes back to her senses a little at the sound of my voice, though is evidently still deep in thought. Well, unless... She trails off again, and this time I simply wait for her to tell me what's on her mind when she's ready, sensing that it's something potentially important. When she does speak again properly, she seems a little bashful. I really don't mean to get in the way of whatever you want to do if you had a specific idea for your performance, but it doesn't have to be 3 separate performances. If you wanted, we could always, you know. I understand what she's getting at before she finishes her sentence, and find myself oddly taken aback by the suggestion. Work together? Yeah, we could do a duet if you didn't want to do things totally alone. Only if it doesn't ruin your plans or anything. Surprised by the sudden alternative, I crease my brow in confusion. Wouldn't you rather do it by yourself, though? The last thing I'd want to do is tread on her goals or get in the way of how she likes to do things, especially considering the fact that she's fought to keep it this way since the start of her time in the club. She tilts her head to one side as she contemplates my question, but her approving expression stays in place. I would, but I think this is... She fiddles with her partially constructed flute still in her hands. It's different, isn't it? I've never had a real friend to work with before, and you, well, I think you understand me better than a lot of people would when it comes to music and other stuff. So, yeah, I mean, I don't want to work with anyone in general, but if it's you... Her cheeks start to turn pink with embarrassment, and the heat in my face tells me that mine are doing the same. I think it'd be nice. A silence falls over us, and while Haruka waits awkwardly for me to respond, I feel myself reeling slightly from what she said. I really never expected her to offer to do something like this, and I'm finding it somewhat touching. In addition, the longer I think about it, the more appealing the idea becomes. From the very beginning, I've always felt more comfortable playing with Haruka than the group, thanks to how she tends to put me at ease. On top of this, Haruka is pretty motivating. When she talks passionately about music and strives to work hard towards her goals, I find myself admiring her determination, and it rubs off on me. Taking on this challenge alone or with the group seems like almost too much to handle, but with Haruka, that might be the best version of things that there is. I'm never going to feel confident about this, but if she's with me, then I feel that I'd have slightly more faith in it than in any other scenario. Due to my hesitation, Haruka grows somewhat deflated, seeming to get the idea that it must have been a bad idea to ask. It's okay if you don't want to. I didn't. No! I'd like to. I blurt the words out a little more forcefully than I'd meant to, interrupting her mid-sentence, and the two of us freeze in embarrassment, though her expression softens. Really? After collecting myself somewhat, I calm down and respond more quietly. Yeah, I think you're right. It would be good to work together, so as long as you don't mind. I feel as though teaming up with me would be doing her talents a disservice, but she doesn't seem to see it that way at all, smiling widely in reply. No, of course not. It'll be great. We can do whatever you like. Apparently excited by the idea, she beams with satisfaction, and I let go of my tension enough to crack a smile myself. I do like the idea that we'll be able to keep practicing together, but for a more focused reason this time, and we'll be playing the same piece for once. Speaking of which, what piece would you like to play? She grows pensive again, though it seems as though she already has an answer on the tip of her tongue. Well, I don't mind, but I was thinking. I know I've only just got the sheet music, but I really do want to play Venus. I'm having to learn it from scratch, so I understand if you don't want to do the same thing and just play something you already know, but... She shuffles on the spot, blushing again. I just think it's so perfect that you found it for me, and if we played it together, it'd be... special. I finish her sentence for her, catching on to what she's feeling, and she nods enthusiastically. Yes, exactly. I love the piece so much, and to play it with the person who helped me find its origin would make it even better, I think. That's only if you want to, though. She stumbles a little over her last words, seeming worried about pressuring me into anything, but strangely, I don't feel too put off by the suggestion. Yeah, I'd have to learn something that I don't know very well at all, and will only have a month to get it right, which ordinarily would be too scary. However, Haruka is in the same boat, and not only will she undoubtedly pick it up quickly, but she's also good at instructing me too, so my progress will probably be better than if I was alone. In addition to this logical view of it, there's also a strange, warm feeling in my chest from her words that I can't quite pin down, but that makes me want to agree. I really do understand how much Venus means to her, and if she wants me to help her realize her dream of performing it for an audience, then I think I want to do that too. I want to put aside the idea of me performing just because the club requires me to, and instead combine that performance with hers in the hope that it will push her closer to what she wants to achieve. I'm not sure how much help I'll be able to provide, but if I can boost her confidence in any way, then I'll give it my best shot. Looking at her more resolutely, though my insides still quiver with nerves at the thought of what lies ahead of me, I respond. I do want to. I think Venus is the right piece for us, don't you? Another big smile spreads across her face, and I feel somewhat consoled that I've made the right decision. You mean it? Yeah, I'm willing to give it a try. She giggles slightly, seeming elated that I've agreed. Thanks, Kakaru. I'm really excited. We'll have to get you some piano sheet music for it as soon as we can. Oh yeah, right. I'd forgotten about that technicality. I guess I'll just have to go back to the bookstore if they don't have it here at school. We'll figure it out. I can't wait to start learning it properly. I find myself chuckling at her exuberance, having never seen her quite this pumped up before. The piece really does mean the world to her, and in a way, it only makes me feel guilty for getting involved and throwing my mediocre piano skills into the mix. Are you sure you're okay doing this with me? I ask before I'm even completely sure that I want to, unable to help myself. I just want her to be certain about sharing something so personal with me, and having me become an integral part of it. I know that Venus is really important to you. I don't want to mess anything up. She gazes at me with an oddly powerful sense of conviction, and I sense her answer before she speaks. Yes, I'm sure, Kakaru. You're the only person I'd do this with. The words hit me somewhat deep. I guess, given our difficulties and the friendship we've created, that we're the right fit for each other. All right. She exhales a slightly giddy laugh, and I find myself glad to see her so motivated. As we fall into another one of our comfortable silences, I feel an odd mixture of emotions. Trepidation at the journey we're about to embark upon, and relief that I'll be doing something that contributes to her happiness, and to start giving back to her in return for all she's done for me. The rest of our club session had gone with a strange feeling of irregularity. Instead of practicing like usual, we'd tentatively gone into the main room during free practice and asked Kudo-sensei if we could go to the library to try and find the sheet music I'd needed. He'd been surprised at our proposal to reduce the amount of club performances at the festival and play together, but in the end he'd seemed slightly encouraged by the idea. He'd stated somewhat laughingly that if it would make us feel better about performing, then it was okay with him. To our surprise, we'd managed to find me a copy of the Planet Suite sheet music for our piano, and our curiosity had sent us on a search for Braille copies, but we'd come away empty-handed. It had been a good job that I'd gone with the idea of getting hers from the city bookstore after all. Still, knowing that the school library had had some copy of the piece in stock the whole time, right under her nose, is a striking thought. With my own copy of the sheet music now in my bag, I stride alongside her as we leave the school building, the last bell having already rung. As I turn to her to say goodbye as usual, she seems just as buoyant as she had been when I'd agreed to perform with her, and I get the feeling that it might last a while. Well, I guess we can get properly stuck into learning this tomorrow. Yeah, definitely. I think we need to decide how much of it we're going to play and break down the different parts into combined sections for each instrument. We can structure it in whatever way's best for us. We will need to figure something out, but I'm pretty sure she'll have a good idea of what's best. Okay, yeah, let's start that tomorrow. Do you want to go to the CD room at lunchtime so we can work it out there? Oh yeah, good idea. We might as well use our little haven as our own personal study area, since apparently nobody else knows of its existence. Alright, I'll meet you at the stairs then. Okay. She smiles, seeming to be looking forward to it already, and it's nice to see her this eager to get started. Bye, Kakaru. Bye. She shoots me one last contented look, and then heads off down the street. I do the same, striding towards my house in the opposite direction, and as I walk, my mind is flooded with a lot of thoughts simultaneously. I'm genuinely surprised that Haruka wants to learn Venus with her, given how special it is to her, although I guess it must be a mark of our friendship. The only thing that's bothering me is the fact that since it really is that important, I've kind of locked myself into this situation where I feel as though I need to deliver even more than before. If I'd gone for the group performance or a solo one, I might not have felt so bad if I dropped out later down the line out of fear, but this is a whole different ballgame. If I lose my nerve before the festival, I'll be letting Haruka down and ruining her chance of making her beloved dream a reality. It's terrifying to think about, in a way, and part of me is regretting ever agreeing to it. But at the same time, another part of me feels as though this is the only way to go about this. I know that I've never really aimed for something like this for myself before, but having said that, my original answer to Kudo-sensei was that I wanted to perform. I made that decision myself, for myself, and without Haruka and Venus being relevant to it. That kind of means that joining forces with Haruka doesn't make that much of a difference in reality. We're both aiming to do the same thing, so trying it together only really changes anything in that it might make us stronger. Taking on something this precious to Haruka is intimidating, but I'm still willing to give it my all and become an integral part of her performance. If I lose the will to do it for myself, then I'll fall back on my will to do it for her and hope to God that it's enough. As I make my way steadily closer to home, I make another decision in my mind. I'd better stick to yesterday's idea that I don't tell my parents about the festival. I just want to get on with things quietly without having the weight of even more people's expectations on my shoulders. Set on keeping it a secret for now, I pick up my pace, wanting to get back to my room and start looking over this new sheet music. At least I don't have to bother with the club pieces anymore. As I wind my way through the streets, my mind rests on the same thought that's been recurring ever since I spoke to Kudo-sensei at the start of the club session. I'm really doing this, aren't I? I actually agreed to attempt to give a public performance. I must be completely bonkers. I sit back in my chair, listening as closely as I can. The sound of Venus fills the room softly, and both Haruka and I concentrate silently on what each instrument is doing. Our 2 copies of sheet music in front of us, we follow along, tracing the notes in our own ways, me with my eyes and Haruka with her fingers. When the piece comes to an end, we pause the CD and look to each other to confer. So, do you think that the flute should take the high melody on the second part, and you can do the lower harmony to it? I think that it would suit our instruments that way. Yeah, definitely. Are you still okay with me playing the introductory phrase? She nods with certainty. Yeah, I think it would have more impact that way when the flute comes in on the next one. Okay. I grab my pencil and make little marks next to the notes that Haruka will play in that section, leaving the rest for myself. I figure that as long as I can erase everything adequately, it won't be too big a deal for me to write on the borrowed book. The 2 of us have been in the CD room for a while now, sacrificing our lunchtime to put our heads into figuring out how we're going to arrange Venus for our performance. Haruka seems highly focused on the job, and I'm grateful for her leadership. When I'd first come to school this morning, I'd been quite unsure of myself, assaulted by a fresh wave of nerves over the fact that I'd actually gone ahead with this. On top of that, I'd also felt some trepidation when we'd first sat down to start working, as I'd assumed that I'd automatically seem pretty inadequate next to her, not used to analyzing music in this way. Luckily, Haruka has managed to put me somewhat at ease during the last 40 minutes or so. Her apparently unending patience, coupled with her ability to explain things very simply, have served to make this process more easy than I'd anticipated. I don't feel quite as much of a burden now that we've been working for a while. And the ostinato? Do you want to play that as chords? We could take some of the notes out and just keep the most important ones. I take a look at the part she's referring to. So, you mean I'll just be playing the same thing repeatedly in the right hand and just alternating the bass notes in the left? Yeah. Are you sure that'll sound okay? Another confident nod. Totally. Each instrument will be playing a different rhythm, so it'll probably be more striking that way. We debate on which notes I'll play, and then I highlight them in the book with a few more subtle marks. Haruka, on the other hand, simply reads her braille once more, nodding to herself, and then sits back with her hands in her lap. Do you need to make notes? It strikes me as pretty inconvenient that she can't just write down what she needs to know, especially because we're doing a pretty big overhaul of the piece. She looks down at her sheet music before shaking her head. No, I'll just remember it. She says it so nonchalantly that it catches me off guard slightly for a moment. I understand that people with such a disability can't just make visual reminders of things like others can, but it must be pretty taxing for her to just have to remember everything she learns and decides when it comes to music. That's kinda tough. She looks at me with a hint of surprise in her expression and then shrugs with a smile. It's just normal to me. Right, of course it is, but it's still pretty inconvenient for her, so all things considered, it's pretty impressive though. She exhales a laugh, waving a hand in the air as if to dismiss the compliment. Not really. And anyway, if I really love a piece, it always sticks in my head. So you've definitely got nothing to worry about with this one. She grins a little sheepishly, amused by her own obsession with the piece, and I laugh. If that's the case, then no, she's not likely to start forgetting anything, considering that it's Venus. We return our focus to the task in front of us, and Holst's melodies echo around the room once more, slowly becoming more familiar to me. I find myself relaxing more and more as time goes on, glad to be able to defer to Haruka's guidance. After splitting off at the end of lunchtime to head to our respective classes, we'd met back up for our club session. Once again, it had felt weird to come straight to our little room, ignoring Kudo-sensei and everyone else, but I'm happy for it to become the routine. We're currently attempting to put what we'd decided on earlier into practice, although it's very sloppy right now thanks to the fact that neither of us are totally sure of what we're doing as of yet. We go for a tentative run-through of the first page of the music, implementing our customized arrangement. Though it doesn't start off too bad, I totally miss one of my pencil marks at one point and start playing the wrong notes. Haruka immediately drops out, my screw-up having confused her. Shit, sorry. After attempting unsuccessfully to keep going and find the right notes, I give up and she giggles at my flailing. It's alright, we're so new to this. I huff in frustration, although it doesn't feel as bad as it would have done had I been with the group instead. Making a mistake and causing the entire ensemble to grind to a halt would be totally mortifying, but with Haruka, we can pretty much just laugh it off. How much time do we have left? Leaning sideways on the piano stool, I take a look at the clock on the wall behind her. Only 10 minutes. Okay. Shall we just have one last try on this part then? Apparently not put off by my blunders, she looks towards me with anticipation. Yeah, sure. I'm about to add something funny about giving her permission to kick me out of the performance if I keep messing things up. However, her expression goes somewhat thoughtful in that telltale way that suggests she's about to say something more serious, so I bite my tongue. After a moment, she raises her gaze back up to me. You know, I'm really glad we're doing this, Kakaru. Really? Not sure what I'd expected. Not what I'd expected, considering I just wrecked a run-through. She nods earnestly at my question. Yeah, I know we've only just started, but I'm already having a lot of fun. And I guess it's just nice to do this with you. I would have been okay by myself, but... She pauses, coming over a little bashful, and some of the awkwardness transfers to me, although it's not entirely uncomfortable. Yeah, just... thanks. A genuine smile spreads across her face, and I can't help but return it, even if I can't see it. I don't know what it is about me that makes her want to keep me around, but if it makes her happy, no problem. The weekend is sort of a gift and a curse simultaneously, relaxing yet problematic. Since the club activities have grown so serious, I do find myself wishing that I had access to a piano outside of school. However, the thought of actually owning one comes with its own issue. Pianos aren't exactly quiet, and I don't think I could play a single note, knowing that the whole household, and possibly even the neighbors, could hear me. It'd be way too embarrassing. So here I am, scanning the notes of Venus for the millionth time, and hoping it'll help the piece stick in my head. It's a little difficult in places due to the fact that Haruka and I have made a lot of adjustments to mold the piece into a duet, but I'm doing what I can. We'd spent the last couple of days concentrating like mad, figuring out the rest of our new arrangement, and Haruka had remained focused and enthusiastic the entire time. The hard-working, diligent side of her has really come out in full force. I've been trying to follow along with her proactive mindset as much as I can, to varying results. As I study the piece, I have to keep reminding myself at regular intervals to keep focus and not think about the big picture. As soon as my mind starts fixating on the fact that all of this is leading up to a festival performance, I start to jitter and lose my concentration. In an attempt to combat it, I keep trying to remind myself that the festival is still weeks away, and if anything, I concoct a little lie and tell myself that there is no performance and we're still just doing this for fun. I'm not exactly in denial, it just helps me to stay calm if I pretend that nothing is going to come out of this. For now. I don't want to let my nerves get out of control and make me do something I'll regret. It's probably not the best way to go about it, but it's all I got. Having started to think about the festival again, I shake it off and go back to my book. However, as I turn the page and scan through the next section of the piece, I start to get confused over which parts are Haruka's and which are mine. I think I made some bad notes here, probably due to trying to get things written down quickly, and now I can't decipher my own scribbles. Damn it. It's Saturday, so Haruka might be doing something with her parents, but I might as well shoot her a text anyway, and she can always reply later. I compose an awkward, sheepish message asking her apologetically to clarify what we'd agreed on for that section. It seems as though she's not busy after all, because a few minutes later her reply comes in. Grabbing my phone once again, I erase my terrible scrawls from my book and replace them with clearer indications of what Haruka had just told me. I have to stifle a laugh at the fact that the only person who knows what's going on is the only one who can't make notes. I thank her for her help and put my phone down, going back to the section to reread now that it makes sense. However, before I can get very far, I'm startled by another message. A little surprised, having thought that our conversation was over, I check it out. While we're talking, I was actually meaning to ask you something. I know we need to take practicing seriously, but I was wondering if you wanted to do something one evening. I think you'll like it. I'm taken aback at the sudden invite, especially considering that, as she mentioned, we have a lot of preparation to do. It seems as though she's got something specific in her mind, though. My curiosity piqued, I reply, What were you thinking of doing? My parents want to see a show in the city. It's an orchestra playing classical music through the ages. I really want to go too, and they said I could invite you. That's thoughtful of them, and to be honest, I'm not sure I'm worthy of the invite. I've only met her parents once, so I'm surprised that they're willing to let me tag along on a family outing. Before I can think of it further, I start typing. Are you sure? Don't you want to make more progress with Venus first? I wait a minute or so before her response comes in. I think we'll be okay. The performance is still weeks away, so me missing one night isn't so bad, and the show's on Tuesday evening, so we'll have practice to music club anyway. I suppose that's a fair point. Spending an evening doing something else won't really make any difference to me, not having an instrument here, and if Haruka's willing to give me a few more potential hours of flute practice at home that night, then I guess it's okay. As I'm contemplating the idea, another text comes in. If you wanted to come, we could go back to mine after school and have something to eat. My parents will take us to the show, and they've said that they don't mind dropping you off at home after since you don't live too far away. God, they're even more generous than I'd realized. This is really nice of them to offer. They're really okay with me coming along? Wouldn't you prefer to go with just your parents? I said it before I realized how dreadfully insecure it sounds. I know that Haruka's aware of my level of confidence, which is basically zero, but I still feel a bit lame having said that. She's quick to refute my questions. Of course we want you to come. It'd be fun. Also, you said you felt like you didn't know much about classical music, so I thought you might like to hear some played by a live orchestra. I always enjoy shows like these. Have you ever been to one? I can only reply with the truth. No, never been. Do you go often? I've gone to around 7, I think. They're really great. I'm pondering what to reply when another message shoots in, hot off the heels of the last one. I swear that using voice-to-text technology actually makes Haruka a faster texter than I am. If you don't like the idea, don't worry, I'll just go with my parents anyway. We just wanted to ask if you'd like to join us. I don't think anyone really pays attention to you at the theater. They're all too busy watching the performance. Though I feel a pang of self-loathing at the fact that she's taking my anxiety into such consideration, I try and weigh up what she's said seriously. I do feel very nervous about going to a theater, having never been to one. However, she raises a good point in that everyone will be sitting in rows, all facing the stage, and putting their focus on what's happening in front of them. I guess it's a bit like going to the movies, which I've actually done a few times. The darkness and giant screen that everyone stares at makes it difficult for anyone to notice me. My stomach's still flipping at the idea, but I try to be reasonable and consider it with a balanced look. A show about classical music through the ages might actually give me a better idea of the genre in general, given that I still don't really know that much. I know I'm not a serious enthusiast like Haruka is, but I think it'd still be interesting. So, given everything I've considered, should I accept? Aware that I've already kept Haruka waiting for a reply, I let my mind run the scenario a couple more times, trying to stay as optimistic about it as possible. I'm not sure if I've reached a decision or not, but for whatever reason, I abandon my phone and head downstairs. There was just a slam in the ceiling above me. Wow. Whoever's up there just dropped something really heavy. Wow. Anyway, both of my parents are sitting on the couch together as I enter the lounge, and when they see me approaching timidly, they both adopt surprised expressions in unison. Hi, Kakaru. Everything okay? I nod, working myself up to tell them what's on my mind. Haruka invited me to the theater on Tuesday after school with her parents. Both of them seem almost as taken aback as I'd been, though I can already sense a hopeful vibe coming from them. I haltingly tell them the details, that I wouldn't need dinner or picking up, and the three of us have an awkward conversation about whether I should go or not. Naturally, they egg me on, but also let me know that it's okay to say no. I acknowledge it with a nod, though I'd feel pretty bad turning down an invitation from Haruka above anyone else. I agonize for a minute, but then a sort of acceptance comes over me, and I realize that I've found my answer. I think I'll go, if that's okay. The smiles on my parents' faces make me feel as though I've made the right decision, even just for their benefit, not even mine. Sure thing, son. You'll have a great time. Yes, you go tell Haruka it's all fine with us. Feeling both trepidation at the idea that this is now happening, and relief that I'm not stressing over my choices anymore, I nod and thank them quietly before heading back upstairs. As I close the door to my room, a familiar, strange sensation washes over me. I guess it's the unsettling mixture of excitement and terror all mashed together into one uncomfortable feeling that doesn't really make a lot of sense. In the end, I think I keep saying yes to Haruka's invites, because being around her seems to take the edge off the horror I feel somewhat. Pulling myself together, I cross the room and pick up my phone to tell Haruka the news. Fantastic! I promise we'll have fun. Maybe it'll inspire us for our performance too. Trying to ignore my fluttering chest, I realize that she might be right. Perhaps watching professional musicians show me how it's really done will boost my motivation. I'm not sure, but in 3 days I'll find out. Monday. Back to school, where Haruka and I can practice together again. I push open the door of the little room timidly as always and keep my head down as I head over to the little corridor. However, as I'm walking, Kudo-sensei looks up and catches my eye. Ah, Akane, can I have a word? Slightly perturbed, I grudgingly go over to his desk. He regards me more cheerfully than he had the last couple of times I'd spoken to him, and I guess it's because I seem a little more set on performing in his eyes, having asked to team up with Haruka. I don't think I'm quite as dedicated as he's probably hoping that I am, but that's something he doesn't need to know. I was just curious about your performance with Fujiwara. Are you definitely set on choosing the Venus movement from Gustav Holst's Planet Suite? Figuring that he's probably wanting to get a definite answer so that he can confirm the piece names for the festival, I nod. Okay, good. Interesting choice, actually. I know that if Holst was in the club list, I'm sure these guys would be clamoring to do Mars or Jupiter. He jerks his head towards the growing number of students behind me with a grin. And I note that he's probably right. From what I've heard from Haruka, who listened to the entire thing as soon as she could get her hands on a CD, a lot of the other pieces in the suite are much more lively than Venus. Thanks to her precious music box, though, Venus is the only clear choice for us. Kudo-sensei jots the name and composer down on the sheet of paper in thin, neat writing, and as I peer at it absent-mindedly, I realize that the group's piece is written above it, and it's not Air on the G string. I'd forgotten for a moment that Kudo-sensei had essentially hyped up the idea of playing Air on the G string to the group for my benefit, and now I'm not even participating. Feeling a spike of guilt, I grimace to myself, although I guess they've settled on something more exciting after all, now that they don't have to consider my tentative playing as a factor. Hoping that I've not caused too much bother, I banish the discomfort from my face as Kudo-sensei straightens up, seeming pleased to have confirmed the details. Right, that's that. How are the two of you progressing? I remember you only getting the sheet music for it last week. Are you managing to play the piece all right? As of Friday, we still haven't managed to get through the whole thing fluent, but that's mostly because we'd only just finalized our arrangement for the whole thing that lunchtime. He probably won't be happy to know that, so I make things sound a little more promising than they are. It's slowly getting better. That's not technically a lie. I try to look relaxed, and if he picks up on any concern on my part, he doesn't show it. Alright, I think I'll pop in and check how things are going in a few more days, if that's alright. I nod again, feeling some slight trepidation at possibly having to play a run-through for him, and he smiles casually. Good! Go on, get to work. He moves his attention to the rest of the room, and I spring into action, realizing that I'm free to go. Haruka turns to greet me as soon as I arrive, seeming eager to get started straight off the bat. Hi, Kakeru. You're slightly later than usual. Yeah, sorry, Kudo-sensei collared me as I was coming here. She begins to look a little worried when I mention this. Oh, everything okay? Yeah, he was just checking that we're definitely doing Venus and asked how it was going. He said he's going to come and check in with us in a few days about it. She wrinkles her nose a little, and it almost makes me laugh. Her past dealings with Kudo-sensei have obviously caused her to find him somewhat irritating. Sounds about right for him. Did he say if he'll want us to play the piece for him or not? No, he didn't clarify. Picturing the scenario in my head, I feel another rush of worry that we haven't improved enough yet to satisfy him, and tell Haruka as much. Her brow creases with concern, but then she huffs and takes on a more decisive look. Well, I guess we'd better do our best just in case then, hadn't we? Not used to seeing her so determined, I feel myself relax slightly, heading over to the piano to indulge her. All right, let's go. Smiling, she nods, turning her attention back to her sheet music, and the two of us settle down to play. By the time our 2 hours together have almost completely passed, we're both feeling a little better about our capabilities. Having had all weekend to study the sheet music, I've started to get the hang of it, and Haruka's evidently been practicing at home as she's managing to play her parts more fluently too. It's not great yet, but it's an improvement. Now that we're finishing our final run-through of the day, we're both feeling slightly more confident about things. Noting that the bell is due to ring soon, we start to pack our things away. Tomorrow's going to be good, isn't it? We'll have another practice and then we'll go to the show. I stiffen slightly at her words, reminded that once school ends tomorrow, I'll be thrust into another unfamiliar situation, although I'd volunteered myself for it. I start to feel nervous, though I do my best to push it aside. I'm excited to hear what you think about the performance afterwards. Are you still okay with going? I'm grateful that she's being considerate of me, but I don't want to let on that I'm more scared than I might seem. It's generous of her and her parents to invite me, so I want to come across as enthusiastic and appreciative. Yeah, I'm okay. I'm interested to hear what types of pieces they'll play. I don't know anything about the different styles or eras of classical music, and as it stands with my current knowledge, I can't imagine what the variations will be. I rack my brain as we finish getting ready and head out into the corridor, trying to remember anything I might have picked up. You might end up learning a few things if you haven't seen a show like this before. Probably. It should be good. As soon as I say this, my mouth twists into a poorly disguised smirk at myself. I think that Haruka's affinity for music is rubbing off on me. You and your parents are changing me, you know. If anybody had invited me to a classical performance before, I would have totally bailed. I put a bite of humor into my voice, and she picks up on it, giggling quietly. Well, if it's a good change, then I guess it's okay, right? We laugh again, and I halt for a moment to let her exit ahead of me. We're enveloped in warm, late afternoon light as we head the school building, turning to say goodbye to each other, although we pause for a moment to go over our plan of action for tomorrow. Haruka reminds me to bring a change of clothes, which I'm grateful for, having forgotten. Some schools encourage its students to wear their uniforms even on personal trips out, as a way of promoting school pride and demonstrating respectful students to the public. However, our school isn't too big on it, and to be honest, I'm kinda glad. I'd rather not be thinking about school and our looming performance every time I look down at myself while we're at the theater. I'll probably have enough on my mind. Okay, well, I guess we'll see each other tomorrow then. She says this with a hint of excitement, and I can tell that she's really looking forward to sharing the theater outing with me. It adds to my nerves a little, but I try not to let it seep into my voice as I reply. Yeah, see you tomorrow. She nods with a smile, and I feel an odd combination of worry and relief. Worry for what unknown things are to come, and relief that at least it's not about the festival for a change. Here we are. I'm walking side by side with Haruka, heading towards her house. It's been a pretty standard Tuesday so far. School and club activities had gone as usual, and Haruka and I had enjoyed another productive practice. When we left together, it had felt bizarre to be walking in the same direction instead of saying goodbye and splitting off to head home. This is the third time this has happened now, but it never feels any more natural each time. Casting an eye up at the sky, I actually find myself grateful for the absence of rain for once. The last thing I need is to get caught in it and mess up my hair or something. I don't usually care much about that sort of thing, but I want to look my best for tonight. I'm hoping to make a good impression with Haruka's parents and not show them up by looking scruffy. I mean, there's already one thing about my appearance that sucks, and I'd better not add anything else. The two of us share a relatively contented silence, and though I'm not currently looking at Haruka, I can practically feel the waves of anticipation coming off her. She must be really excited about the show. In a much smaller way, I am too, but I'm having to battle through my nerves first. Hopefully, once we get to the theater and are settled into our seats and the lights go down, and I'll be able to relax about it a bit. For now, I'm still shaky. Haruka takes out her keys as we approach her house, unlocking the door and letting me in with a smile just as she had last time. Bowing my head, almost in anticipation of seeing her parents, I follow her inside. My chest begins to flutter slightly, nervous about meeting them again. But once we head into the lounge, Haruka's dad stands up from the couch, wearing an easy smile. Just in time! Nice to see you again, Kakeru. Come on in! He shoots me an affable grin, then turns away so as to not make me too uncomfortable, and I find myself feeling truly grateful that he and his wife both seem to understand my problem and are capable of taking it in stride without a fuss. The three of us head towards the kitchen, and the tantalizing smell of food coming from it reaches us before we even get there, causing my stomach to start lusting after it. Luckily, we don't have to wait, as Haruka's mom has timed our meal to be ready for our arrival. Hungry and wanting to be sure we're ready to head out in good time for the show, we finish our greetings and gather in the dining room to share this feast. Just as we're about to begin eating, I remember something important and delve into my bag to take out some money. I'm not sure how much my ticket for the performance cost, but since Haruka's mom bought them all together, I want to be sure that I pay my way. Gathering up as many notes as I figure will cover it, and then a little extra just in case, I bashfully offer them to her as she comes around my side of the table to help Haruka fill her plate. My head is deeply bowed in both respect and embarrassment, but I can still picture her expression as I hear her speak. "Oh, that's all right, Kakaru. It's admirable for you to offer, but this is our treat." Stunned, I retract my money slowly, awkwardly flashing her the most sincere eye contact I can muster before looking down again. "Really?" "Yes, don't worry about it. This is your first concert, isn't it?" I nod silently. "Exactly. We've been taking Haruka to concerts for years. I think it's only fair that you get treated at least once, don't you?" She directs the question towards her husband, who nods with a grin. "Definitely. Let us take you two out as a bit of fun before the festival, eh? You must be working hard." Flummoxed by their generosity, I curl myself into the deepest bow yet, probably looking like a bit of an idiot, and scrunching the money carelessly into my fists in the process. "Thanks so much." "No problem, kid. Now let's eat before this goes cold." With a grin, he begins to tuck into his food, encouraging the rest of us to do the same. I turn towards Haruka, and as though she can read my mind, she tilts her head in my direction and smiles, nodding slightly as if to reassure me that it really is okay for me to accept their gift. Still taken aback, I stuff the money back into my bag and join the three of them as they eat. After a few moments, Haruka's dad pipes up again. "Besides, I'd say you did a great job by helping Haruka find out where that music box melody came from. Let's call it a thank you for that, shall we?" Haruka emits a quiet giggle at the reminder of it, evidently still on cloud 9 at being able to listen to and learn to play the tune's original piece, and I nod. "I'm only sorry that we didn't find it out ourselves earlier." He eyes Haruka somewhat guiltily, obviously having wished that he'd managed to do it for her years ago when they'd first gotten the box. "I didn't take much notice of the Venus painted on it. I thought it was probably just the manufacturer's signature or something." I could see why he made that mistake. It's easy to assume something like that, and it's only out of my own fresh curiosity, coupled with my relatively decent internet savvy, that I was successful in riddling it out. He chuckles to himself, something else evidently having cropped up in his mind. "I suppose we'll have to up our game when it comes to classical music. You've overtaken us." I managed a small laugh along with everyone else. "I don't know that much." "But more since you started spending time with Haruka, right? We know the feeling." Another bout of laughter hits the air, and I can't help but agree. Haruka definitely has that effect on people. We settle down and finish our meals, and after the dishes are taken care of, Haruka heads upstairs to change her clothes, her mom going with her to assist. Her dad shows me to the guest bedroom where I can do the same, and after thanking him awkwardly, I change out of my uniform and into the set of regular clothes I brought with me. I don't really own anything that you'd call formal, but I still tried my best to look as presentable as I can, wearing a buttoned shirt that hasn't seen the light of day for a while. Feeling slightly odd in my own clothes, I head back downstairs and into the dining room. After a while, everybody gathers together, ready to leave, and with an excited beam from Haruka, we set off for the show. Okay. This is the tricky part. The car pulls up to the theater's covered parking lot, and we all step out. My nerves have been steadily building on the way here, and now that we've arrived, I'm starting to jitter. Once the actual performance starts, it'll probably get easier, but the prospect of waiting in line to get our tickets checked and filing through the rows and rows of people to get to our seats, that's not good. As everyone readies themselves to head off, I notice Haruka fiddling with her cane. She's come here several times before from what she said, but I can still sense a little anxiety emanating from her. I guess it's still not that familiar, given that it's only once in a while. Awkwardly, I shuffle up alongside her, wanting to both offer my presence as something to help steady her nerves and gain the exact same thing from her at the same time. Ready? She turns towards me, a hint of reassurance brightening her expression slightly. Yeah. Her Her parents face us, seeming surprised but approving of the fact that I've stepped up to give Haruka some guidance as we walk to the theater, and we all set off together, her mom taking her other side for extra support. We head through the parking lot's hallways until we're greeted by one of the theater's entrances, the other being outside on the street. The hum of noise produced by the crowds of people makes my heart start to pound, and I immediately wish I hadn't come here. However, as I'm fidgeting and beginning to sweat, something unexpected but highly appreciated happens. A theater steward, currently unoccupied, peers in our direction and notices Haruka's cane, a look of concern quickly growing on his face. He makes his way promptly toward us, taking out a scanning device identical to the ones the other stewards are using, and gestures for us to follow him with a friendly expression. "Allow me to escort you to your seats, if you would. Please step this way." A little bewildered and still nervous as hell, I lumber along awkwardly alongside Haruka and her parents as we take him up on his offer, my head down. I guess he realized that Haruka's disabled and wants to assure that she's able to get to her seat comfortably. That's a pretty good stroke of luck. It saves us having to wait out here and endure the potential stares of everybody else. I'll have to continue to take deep breaths to steady myself as we all reach the front of the line, the helpful steward scanning our tickets and inviting us to follow him towards the theater's main room. However, as we round the corner and escape the main crush of people, my terror slowly starts to abate, mostly thanks to the drop in volume. Taking care to give Haruka space and let her go ahead of me, I file in after her. As we take our seats, the steward leaving us with a smile after ensuring that we had everything we needed, I discreetly eye the room from under lowered eyelids. To my gradual relief, it seems as though everybody really is just going about their business, finding their own seats, buying drinks and snacks, and chatting animatedly between themselves. Additionally, thanks to where we're sitting, just over half the room is in front of us, looking ahead at the stage, and the only view that those behind us will have is of the back of my head. I guess it is like the movies, as I'd previously thought. With that somewhat comforting thought, I dare myself to take a more thorough look at the place itself. I can't say I've really been to any theaters before, but this is a lot more ornate and fancy than I've been expecting. The seating and walls are swathed in deep shades of red and plum, and the edges of each tier of seats and the area around the stage are a decadent champagne gold. It's a very nice building. It looks like something out of a movie or a TV drama, and seems fitting for a classical music performance. I pull my attention back to the conversation, noticing that Haruka and her parents are now chatting, and hope that I haven't been too rude by zoning out momentarily. It's going to take me a while to actually relax somewhat, but I think I can just about handle it. It's also in this moment that I realize Haruka's parents have arranged everyone so that they're on the ends of our group, taking the brunt of sitting next to strangers, so that Haruka and I can sit in the middle next to each other, slightly shielded on either side. I didn't even notice them do that. I guess they must have thought ahead and made sure that we'd walked in that order when we'd gone to head down to the row to our seats. It gives me another pang of gratitude towards how thoughtful they are. With Haruka and her mom on my left and her dad on my right, I do my best to settle down and make peace with the environment, accepting that this is where I'll be for the next few hours. Got another trophy.
Ladies and gentlemen, tonight's show will begin in 5 minutes. Please take your seats and get ready for a wonderful performance.
The announcement causes the people currently buying drinks or heading to the bathroom to quicken their pace, eager to make sure they don't miss the start of the show. The greater sense of occasion seems to wash over everybody, excited for the music to begin. It seems to have the same effect on Haruka too, as she straightens up a little in her seat, beginning to smile. I hope you enjoy it, Kakaru. Are you feeling alright? She doesn't need to imply that her question extends to more than just my general mood, and I'm grateful that she's still thinking of my anxiety. Yeah, I'll be okay. She nods, seeming glad, and turns her attention back to the room, seeming antsy and wanting the show to begin. If I recognize any of the pieces, I'll let you know who they're by. Ah, okay. That's a thoughtful idea considering that we didn't buy any of the concert's official programs or anything like that. A couple more minutes pass, and then without warning, the lights slowly go down, signaling the start of the show. A deliciously calm hush falls over the whole room in response, and coupled with the now near darkness, it serves to soothe my nerves further. This is much better. I can deal with this. Haruka stiffens in her seat with excitement, reacting not to the lack of light but to the absence of sound. A short introductory announcement is made, and then the stage lights come up to bathe the orchestra members in various colors as they stride into view. I join in as everybody applauds their entrance, and once most of them have taken their positions, a small group of them gather in front of the conductor, no instruments in hand. He signals to them, and to my surprise, they begin to sing. The sound they produce immediately reminds me of an old-fashioned European church music, full of dense harmonies, and like Ave Maria had been, I think the lyrics are in Latin. After a short while, a pianist begins to accompany the singers. Haruka leans a little closer to my side, half whispering so that I can hear her over the music, but not too loud as to be disruptive. This is by an English composer called John Dunstable. Wow, I do not know that guy. It's from the Renaissance period, so the early 1400s. Cool. I whisper the single word back to her in acknowledgement, and she settles back into her seat. I hadn't expected such vocal-heavy music, but then I suppose instrumental music might not have been that well developed in the 1400s. The show is starting from a lot further back in time than I'd expected. The piece goes on for almost 10 minutes, and then comes to an equally voice-laden close. Once again, I join in with the applause, watching as the little choir take the back seat, the main orchestra getting ready to perform the next piece. However, one female singer remains in front of the conductor, so I guess the next piece will also feature vocals. Out of habit and nerves, I find myself peeking at my surroundings, but everybody is so engrossed in what's happening on stage that I'm going completely unnoticed. I remind myself of the comforting fact once more and put my attention back onto the show. The orchestra begins to play, the stringed instruments coming to the forefront especially, and I also spy some sort of medieval-looking guitar-esque instrument being used. I'm not entirely sure what it's called, but they crop up in a lot of medieval imagery. A mandolin? After a minute, the female singer joins the ensemble, performing an impassioned operatic vocal. Again, opera isn't really my thing, but I can appreciate the work and expression she's putting into it. Haruka discreetly tells me that the show has moved into the Baroque period, and that this is part of a large opera by an Italian composer called Luigi Rossi, originally over an hour long. This excerpt only lasts 5 minutes though, and then the crowd claps once more at its end. The singer then takes her place among the others, and the pianist moves over to another instrument with a keyboard, which I recognize to be a harpsichord. It's very similar to piano, but sounds a little different. The conductor signals to the group once they're ready, and they burst into a sudden, fast, and complex piece, the notes going all over the place. I can't fathom being able to play anything like this. It's even more fiddly than Rondo alla Turca, the hardest piece on the club list back when I still played those songs. The intricate melodies just don't seem to stop coming. It's automatically more impressive than the previous two pieces, and Haruka leans in towards me again with a smile on her face, obviously enjoying the abrupt change of pace too. This is a Bach piece. Ah, same composer as Air on the G string. It's good. She nods contentedly and puts her attention back onto the music. The grand, jovial sounds continue to resonate around the theater, and after a couple more minutes, the piece ends just as suddenly as it had begun. The audience erupts into a louder applause than before, evidently having enjoyed the performance considerably. The members of the orchestra ready themselves again, and then we're treated to something much more serious and expressive, a slower, more dramatic piece that brings the choir back into the fray. Haruka informs me that they've moved into the classical period now, and that this is a piece by Mozart, the culprit behind Rondo alla Turca. I'm surprised, as this is completely different in style, and the range of his compositions is somewhat impressive. I allow the music to fill my ears, enjoying the sense of escapism I'm getting. And now I'm craving going to a concert myself. It feels like such a big thing to be out of a regular routine, doing something like this, and the fact that I'm managing to hold myself together is pretty bold of me by my standards. The piece shifts, changing the key from minor to major, and replacing the melancholy feel with a more joyous one as it does. The choir sustain a long harmony, and then the conductor brings it all to a halt with a swish of his baton. It reminds me of Kudo-sensei for a moment, and I almost chuckle out loud. Luckily, even if I had, it wouldn't have mattered, as the audience claps enthusiastically once more, covering any noise I would have made. At this point, the orchestra take a bow, and as they begin to head off stage, an announcement informs us that there will be an intermission, followed by more music after the break. As the noise level begins to rise rather quickly in response, and the lights brighten up to their original glow, I find myself flinching slightly, having been thoroughly enjoying the solace of the near darkness. It takes me a moment to collect myself, feeling like I've been startled out of a dream. But as I notice a large portion of the audience leaving the room to visit the bathroom and buy more drinks, I start to settle down.
So, how are you liking it so far?
She directs the question at both myself and Haruka, and before I can drum up any sort of response, Haruka joins in.
It's great! It makes me want to come here every night.
Both of her parents giggle with a knowing look, already fully aware of how much she'd been enjoying herself before asking. Yeah, it's interesting. They nod enthusiastically at the few words I managed to chip in.
It's good to hear how the music developed over the years. There was a lot of singing in the early days, wasn't there?
We all agree, offering our own opinions of the first half's performances, though I feel as though I don't have a lot to say, probably because I still don't really know much about classical music as a whole. Haruka's parents seem to pick up on this, and her dad shoots me a nonchalant grin.
Don't worry, we're not smart about it either. Like I said before, there's only one music connoisseur among us lot, and it's not you, me, or my wife.
Haruka laughs bashfully at his statement, and we all follow suit. Once we quiet down again, her mom pipes up thoughtfully.
I'm glad you are, though, Haruka. It's brought a lot of joy to us over the years.
Haruka shakes her head in response, though a smile still plays at the corners of her mouth. The four of us grow pensive, and during the lull in conversation, I ponder what her mom has just said. They must really enjoy the fact that Haruka has a hobby and something that she's actively motivated to pursue. I imagine it can be easy for a disabled person to grow complacent about their condition and stop trying to do things, deeming it pointless. Haruka definitely doesn't fall into that category, and if anything, her passion rubs off on those around her due to her enthusiasm. Over the time I've been a part of the music club and getting to know Haruka, I've grown to somewhat enjoy playing pieces properly, and hearing new ones too. My knowledge slightly widened under her influence. It's probably thanks to Haruka that I stayed in the club at all. Even if the thought of performing terrifies me, I've still gained something with this new hobby, or should I say, old hobby reignited. I guess I kinda owe her my thanks. Swiveling slightly in my seat, I face her a little more directly, speaking in a hushed tone out of embarrassment. Haruka?
Yeah?
My throat dries up. It takes me a second to swallow awkwardly and pull some words out of myself. Thanks, for bringing me here, but also, well, for everything. My cheeks begin flaming with heat at the inadequacy of what I just said. Thankfully, her parents are talking to each other, leaning across the seats behind us, and probably haven't heard me. I'm not sure whether she truly understands the largest connotation behind everything, but she might have picked up at least some of it, as she smiles warmly, somewhat conveying a feeling that we might be on the same wavelength.
That's what friends are for.
I emit a small, partially amused noise, and she does the same. I guess we don't really need to go into specifics. Our understanding of each other's things our understanding of each other's anxieties is good enough that we don't need to spell out what we mean. We don't speak again, simply resting in the moment, and then the lights dim once more, plunging us back into the low light I've been craving since the intermission began, and signaling the start of the second half. I turn to face the stage properly, and to my surprise, only the pianist steps into the light this time. Met with a barrage of applause, he sits at the piano to deliver a solo performance. As I'm wondering what to expect, he begins to play a melody that even I'm familiar with, and a muted realization comes over pretty much everybody else in the room as they recognize the piece too. Wanting to beat Haruka to the punch for a change, I lean across to her. It's Moonlight Sonata. She nods, seeming pleased that I know the Beethoven piece, although it's so famous I'd struggle not to, even with my lack of classical expertise.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Have you heard the full 15 minutes?
15 minutes? I thought it was quite short and repetitive. Perhaps most of the well-known uses of it don't actually utilize the full version. No. A knowing look of anticipation grows on her face in response.
I think he'll do it now. Just wait for it.
Without giving me any more clues as to what she's referring to, she leans back in her seat and fixes her attention back onto the music properly. Somewhat befuddled, I do the same, figuring that I'm just going to have to see for myself. The piece continues as I know it, sorrowful and slow, and then to my surprise, around the 6-minute mark, it completely shifts in demeanor, growing more upbeat and almost jolly in places. This is certainly not a part of the piece I've ever heard before. However, just as I'm beginning to think that this is all there is to the change, something absolutely mind-blowing happens. After letting some notes ring out, the pianist straightens his back as though he's about to do something drastic, and then begins to positively hammer on the keys, turning the piece from a soft lament into an intense galloping affair. I can't believe what I'm hearing and seeing. His fingers are moving so fast that they just become a blur, and the way he pushes and pulls the dynamics in such a fine-tuned manner creates something so expressive, my jaw almost drops open. For the first real time in my life, I find myself totally riveted by a piece of music. How is he capable of such a masterful, controlled performance? It's out of this world. I continue to stare and listen in awe as the man pounds away at the keys for another 9 whirlwind minutes, so vigorously that I can't understand how he's keeping it up. Then, with a few dramatic, stabbing chords, he brings the piece to its cacophonous end. The applause is the loudest it's been all night, and I join in wholeheartedly, unexpectedly moved by his impressive performance. Now that's what I call a musician. That was ridiculous! I mutter the sentiment in Haruka's direction, able to be a little louder amongst the hubbub of claps and cheers.
Right? So talented!
I find myself grinning in the excitable moment and have to make an effort to calm down as the rest of the orchestra join the pianist on stage once more, almost feeling like a different person for a second. All that impressive piano playing had gotten me somewhat giddy. As the noise from the crowd dies away and the orchestra look to the conductor again, I settle down and continue to take in the different styles of music they produce. I'm feeling a little more into it than I had been before, now that my interest has been properly piqued. The rest of the second half moves into the romantic period of the 1800s, showcasing a light, string-centric piece by Schubert and another solo piano piece, this time slow and pretty, and by Chopin. When it's time for the final piece of the evening, there's a ripple of disappointment across the room, and it touches me slightly too. This has actually been something of a fun experience, more so than I'd imagined it before I came here. Professional as ever, the orchestra strike up, playing an upbeat waltz by Austrian composer Strauss, and moving in what must be incredibly well-practiced unison. It's pretty admirable, and as I'm sitting there watching intently, I hear something to my left. Haruka lets out a breathy, slightly exhilarated laugh, and I turn to her. She seems genuinely moved by the music, leaning forward in her seat to rapt attention, completely engrossed in the sound. At times, she closes her eyes, beaming and clearly loving the experience, lost to the music. It makes me smile a little. I guess this is Haruka in her element, at her happiest, or at least the happiest she can be without playing music herself. That's her goal, isn't it? To give a performance like this and make someone else feel the way she's feeling right now. Looking back at the stage and watching the orchestra work their magic, I feel as though I settle into some sort of small revelation. I think I get it now. I'd understood what she'd meant when she told me that she'd wanted to perform for others and make them smile, but I don't think I'd really comprehended the scale of it until this moment. These musicians are delivering such a great performance, and everybody in the room is fascinated and thoroughly enjoying themselves, lifted from whatever problems they have in their everyday lives. That's actually a really powerful thing. I eye the people on stage one by one, and they all have smiles on their faces. Being able to move people like this and enjoy the experience for themselves too is probably very rewarding for them. The way they play with such enthusiasm and harmony, could Haruka and I ever give a performance this good? Those people up there, could I be one of them? I don't know. Maybe I could, but it's highly unlikely. It still feels absolutely terrifying. But for the first time, I'm starting to feel a little spark of curiosity, of excitement, of ambition, I guess. To be one of those people, to play music that brings joy to yourself and others. That would be amazing. Nothing like anything else that school prepares us for. Teaching, becoming a lawyer, or typing in a depressing office until you die, those things would never give you a feeling like that. Music is something completely different. Haruka has always felt this, and now I understand it too. I know why she dreams her dream. I'm so absorbed in my thoughts and the captivating sway of the music that I barely notice when it ends. It's only once everyone around me is clapping like mad that I fall out of my reverie and sheepishly clap along with them. The orchestra take a bow, and as they slowly disappear from view, I'm left feeling somewhat strange, as though something special just happened, and now everything is a little different from how it was before. And save to that slot. And there we go. That will bring today's stream of Venus Improbable Dream to a close. Man, that was beautiful. We're doing it. Kakeru and Haruka are going to be playing Venus from the Planet Suite. All right. I only have one more choice that I have to make in order to set up the ending. So yeah. Something to look forward to. So yeah, I will be coming back on next Sunday to continue my playthrough of Venus Improbable Dream. I'll be back Tuesday and Friday to play something else. And yeah, this is a great game. I'm really much enjoying it. So yeah, shout out to the lurkers. Shout out to all the people watching this on YouTube later. On behalf of East Asia Soft, I have been Skull. Have yourselves a great day and a great week. And I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.